Hello, everyone. Today we'll be presenting our group behavior change project on video self-evaluation on skill acquisition with yoga postures for yoga beginners, a replication study. Group members include Marjorie Diaz, Michelle Graves, Kaitlyn Henry, and myself, Terri Wong. Okay, so let's get started. We will begin with a little bit of background. Past literature has primarily focused on video modeling and video feedback. Video modeling is a recording of an individual performing a target behavior at mastery without any errors. Video feedback occurs after. Basically, it is showing the performer a video clip of his or her own performance of a target behavior while receiving positive and/or corrective feedback from another individual. With the plethora of studies conducted on video modeling successfulness with those with mild to severe intellectual disabilities, it is viewed as an effective evidence-based treatment for language communication, social skills, behavior, and task instruction. In recent years, with the increasing exposure of behavioral sciences to the general population, the use of video modeling and feedback strategies are becoming increasingly utilized in various fields. In particular, in the field of sports, where skill acquisition and performance are key factors, video modeling and feedback has been employed as a means of increasing performance. In recent literature, these strategies have been explored to enhance gymnastic skills, improve horse riding backing skills, improve martial art performance, and skill acquisition with yoga postures. Now we're going to move on to the purpose of our study. As mentioned in the title, our study is the replication of Downs and colleagues' 2015 study of the effects of video evaluation on skill acquisition with yoga postures. We'll be looking specifically at video self-evaluation. And it's a combination treatment package that has both video and self-feedback. The video is a recording of a video of oneself performing the target behavior with errors, which is different from video modeling, which is without errors. And then it's followed by self-feedback, which is a review of the video, plus scoring a task analysis on his or her own performance. We will then be evaluating the effectiveness of video self-evaluation on increasing accuracy of performance of yoga poses. We'll be looking at 3 behaviors, and they are the downward dog, the tree pose, and warrior pose. Next, Michelle will be discussing the methods we employed during the study.
Thank you, Terri. Okay, so let's start off with our participants for the study. We had 4 female graduate students interested in learning yoga poses. Our age range was 23 to 42 years of age. We had no previous experience with any of these yoga poses and no previous injuries that would disable us from participating in this study. Now, in the original study by Downs and colleagues, there were only 2 participants. Both were male, and their ages were 21 and 24. So that differed a little bit in the original study and our study. For the setting, all sessions were video recorded in each participant's home or other quiet space, and this space was determined by safety and availability. So in the original study, the participants participated in sessions at a fitness lab at a university, along with the research team there. For our study, it varied from participant to participant which location was used. So some used a bedroom or a living room in their own home. Some needed to use an office or another workspace. And so we each had to individually determine what space was best for us in terms of safety, availability, minimal distractions, internet availability, and so forth. The materials used in this study included a yoga mat, a camera with video recording capabilities, a computer, or another similar device that has video playback capabilities. And then, of course, internet access. We all had to collaborate with videos, our data, the methodology, training sessions, and so forth among all members of the research team. So internet access was definitely necessary for this study. So for baseline sessions, 2 devices were used simultaneously. We had to have one for watching a video model as well as one video recording the session. So essentially, we had to have a video of us watching a video while performing the yoga poses. So at some points in the study, multiple devices were needed simultaneously. So for the dependent variables, these are our target behaviors. We had 3 types of widely used yoga poses, as Terri mentioned in our introduction. We have the tree pose, the warrior pose 2, and the downward facing dog pose. The tree pose is defined as a balancing pose in yoga in which one stands on one leg with arms raised. The warrior 2 pose is a stretch pose in which one stands with legs and arms spread apart. And the downward facing dog pose is a stretch pose in which one stands on hands and feet simultaneously. Now, there are many more details to these definitions, so there are more detailed descriptions of these poses included in each of the target behaviors task analysis. So for the data collection portion, the participants self-recorded each session, as we talked about earlier with the need for video recording capabilities. These session videos were then played back while scoring each step on a task analysis for accuracy. And the task analyses included steps related to body positioning, breathing, and duration of each pose. So for body positioning, the task analyses included items such as start with your feet 2 to 3 inches apart, move right leg 2 to 3 feet from left leg, and so forth. So it would tell us what to do with our feet as well as our arms, if we were starting with our arms by our side or on our hips, what to do with your arms throughout, and so forth. And then as far as breathing goes, there were certain portions of the task analyses that included inhaling and exhaling at appropriate times. And for the duration of each pose, we had, for the tree pose and for the warrior pose, we were required to hold those poses for 30 seconds once we got in the final position. For the downward dog, we were required to hold that pose for a duration of 1 minute once in position. Now, for these task analyses, for the downward dog, there were 9 steps to the task analysis. But for the tree pose and the warrior pose, those task analyses both included 17 steps. These task analyses were customized for each of the yoga poses. So they were all 3 different. There were some similar components of each task analysis, such as maybe our starting position or our finishing position. But the majority of the content of each task analysis was very specific to the corresponding target behavior. The task analyses were actually acquired by us from Dr. Raymond Miltenberger. So he was one of the researchers from the original study, the Downs and colleagues. He is one of the colleagues there, and his information was included in the article. And so we reached out to him with consent from Dr. Connolly for this study and requested copies of his task analysis because the steps of the task analyses were not included in the study. And so he sent us each task analysis for the target behavior that they use in the original study, along with his consent for us to use those task analyses for this project. So we are certainly appreciative to him for that. That was very helpful in trying to fully replicate this study as close as possible to the original study. We took a percentage of accurate responding, which was a number of correct responses divided by the total number of steps, then multiplied by 100 to convert that figure into a percentage. For inter-observer agreement, we used trial by trial IOA, which means that each step in the task analysis for each target behavior, we compared our data versus another researcher's data. If our data matched, then we would give ourselves a plus for that corresponding step. And if our data did not match for that step, then we would give ourselves a minus. So we did this for 33 to 39% of all sessions. 33% was the minimum number of sessions in which IOA data was taken in the original study. So we did meet that minimum requirement there for replication. 2 researchers watched the same videos of the same yoga poses. We scored the task analyses as previously mentioned, and then the percentage of agreement was calculated. So if we had the same data, that was considered an agreement. If we had different data for that specific step, that was considered a disagreement. And so we took these number of agreements divided by the total number of steps and then multiplied by 100 to reach our percentage of IOA. So let's look at our results for our inter-observer agreement measures. So for Michelle, there was a mean IOA of 100%. This was rounded up from 0.5 or above, and the range was 94 to 100%. For Marjorie's IOA, she had 94% as a mean for her IOA and ranged from 89 to 100%. Terri's IOA was 95% for her average and ranged from 82% to 100%. And Kaitlyn had a mean IOA of 92% with a range of 76 to 100%. So if you look at these figures on the chart, you can see that we do have some low scores for some of the IOA. However, if you look at the mean IOA for each participant, the mean IOA remained above 90%. So those low scores were few and far between, and we were able to maintain high levels of inter-observer agreement throughout the study by staying above 90% for our mean IOA. For treatment integrity, each researcher measured the accuracy of implementation of the independent variable for another researcher. So the independent variable is our treatment phase, which for us was the video self-evaluation. 38 to 43% of all sessions were scored for treatment integrity. 38% was the minimum number of sessions in which treatment integrity data was taken in the original study. So we met the minimum requirement for replication for this portion as well. So a task analysis was created and utilized across all researchers on the research team. We wanted to ensure that we were accurately implementing all of the steps of the treatment phase. And so portions of this task analysis included steps such as having, all of your materials prepared, following all of the steps to implement all of the procedures accurately, and so forth. So for treatment integrity, a percentage was also calculated for this measure. It was the percentage of accurate implementation, which was the number of steps implemented accurately divided by the total number of steps, then multiplied by 100. And our treatment integrity across all researchers, across all target behaviors, was 100% across the board. So we were able to maintain very high treatment integrity. In the original study, if the researchers' treatment integrity fell below 80%, then they attended retraining sessions. However, for us, retraining sessions was not needed because we did maintain high levels of treatment integrity throughout this project. Let's talk about our experimental design. We utilized a multiple baseline across behaviors, as our original study did. This determined the effectiveness of the independent variable, which again is our treatment phase or the video self-recording or self-evaluation. So there was one trial per yoga pose per session. So each session was comprised of one tree pose, one warrior pose, and one downward facing dog pose. We had 3 sessions per meeting, which essentially was 3 of each yoga pose, or 9 yoga poses total, and then 1 meeting per week. Now, in the original study, these meetings and sessions took place with the participants and researchers all in the same location. Because we served dual roles of researcher and participant for this study, that was not feasible for us. And so our meetings and sessions were done independently. So instead of meeting together for each session, we did the sessions on our own and then video recorded those sessions. And then later, other members of the research team were able to view those sessions. So that was a slight variation from the original study due to doing the study remotely. So meetings did not include any outside individuals, and we all conducted and recorded our own sessions independently, as previously mentioned. So let's talk about our baseline measures. Participants watched a video model of the yoga pose while attempting the yoga pose. So in the original study, they had a person modeling the yoga poses for each of the target behaviors during the session for baseline. For us, we weren't able to use outside individuals, and we wanted to be consistent across all participants. So we identified 3 videos that closely resembled the task analysis that were provided by the original research team. And we utilized these videos to provide our video model for our baseline sessions. So the participants video recorded each session while simultaneously watching the video model and performing the yoga pose. And then videos of these sessions were uploaded to a shared file with other researchers, where these other researchers would then score our baseline sessions for accuracy. So essentially during the baseline session, we were watching a video, demonstrating the yoga pose to the best of our abilities, and also recording all of that. So that's the portion that we discussed earlier, where we needed 2 devices with video recording capability or video playback capability. So we could both watch a video and video record ourselves simultaneously. So when a target behavior met baseline stability, that yoga pose then shifted into the treatment phase, as behaviors do with a multiple baseline design. All of the baseline to treatment phase varied for each behavior. So each target behavior entered the treatment phase at different times in accordance with a multiple baseline design. The number of data points for each phase, baseline and treatment, varied for each participant, and this was determined based on how soon each behavior met stable baseline criteria before moving on to the treatment phase. So for our treatment phase, the video self-evaluation, video models were then removed. So we no longer had a model of the yoga pose, and we're then demonstrating the yoga pose independently to the best of our abilities. So we video recorded ourselves performing these yoga poses, just from the best of our memory. And the recording was then viewed by the participant immediately following the session. So we recorded ourselves doing this yoga pose, then we sat down and watched our own video, and we scored our task analysis watching our own video. So this differs from baseline to treatment in that baseline we had the video model, and in baseline we had someone else scoring our task analysis. And in the video self-evaluation phase, the hope is that through scoring our own task analyses, we can identify steps that we were consistently missing, or the specific components of each yoga pose that were inaccurate, and then self-correcting those later on. So at this time, Marjorie is going to discuss results of the baseline and treatment phases.
Go over everyone. So participant was Michelle. Sure, her pose is the downward dog. She has 3 points for baseline, and in the treatment phase, you can see it was a bit consistent, and then it increased. She went up 6% from baseline to treatment. Her second pose was the warrior 2. Here's her baseline data. And then in the treatment phase, she went up 47%. Then we have the tree pose. Her baseline data is a little bit variable. And then when she gets into the treatment phase, her average results went up by 37%. So she increased her percent correct on the task analysis for each pose. The next participant is Marjorie. Her baseline data is stable here. And then in the video self-evaluation, she increased 6%. There was a bit of an increase, and then kind of back to baseline, and then an increase again. But an average results went up 6% in the downward dog. For the second pose, the warrior 2, a bit variable baseline, and then she had a 36% increase in the treatment phase. The third pose was the tree pose, a bit consistent here. And then in the treatment phase, she went up 21%. So again, for her average results in all three poses increased in percent correct on her task analysis in the treatment phase. Our third participant is Kaitlyn. Here are her accuracy points in baseline. She increased an average of 8% in the treatment phase for her tree pose. Her second pose was the warrior 2. And she went from baseline to treatment. She increased an average of 10%. In the downward dog, again, she increased 9% from baseline to treatment. Again, for her, she increased her average results in all three poses in the treatment phase. Our fourth participant is Terri. In her downward dog, her baseline data shows from baseline to treatment, she increased 42%. Her second pose was the tree pose. We have her baseline data here. We had a little bit of a dip. However, her data sessions increased an average of 1% in the treatment phase. For warrior pose, she went from baseline to treatment. Her average results were 12%. And then again, for her, she had her average results resulted in an increase of percent correct on task analysis. So as you can see, for all four participants, their average results increased once in the treatment phase. So now Kaitlyn will now present the discussion and limitations portion of our project.
All right, thank you, Marjorie. All right, so now let's talk about the limitations. For this study, the group ran into a few limitations that prevented 100% accurate replication of the original study. So due to the inability to meet in person, each member did agree to record 9 sessions of baseline and send them to their respective partners in order to give each member time to watch and record the data. For this reason, some data had to be scrapped because stabilization had occurred in the midst of those sessions, which allowed a transition into treatment. We also could not have a true baseline because each group member played the part of the researcher and the participant. So unlike the original study, we were not blind to the experimental conditions. Time constraints also made it difficult to replicate the study completely. In the original study, participants were able to have a video feedback phase with the researcher, as well as a maintenance phase after 5 weeks, which we did not have time to do for the replication. In the original study, they also had a yoga instructor approve the task analysis for social validity. Because we are not able to have outside participants for the replication, we were unable to obtain social validity in the same way. However, we were able to use the same task analysis as the original study, which was approved by their yoga instructor and given to us by the researcher, Dr. Miltenberger. So without having a yoga instructor to show us the poses like the original study, we needed to find videos that aligned with the task analysis to use for an example for baseline. So long distance was the last limitation that we had because our group members were in different time zones. Communication and meetings were a little bit challenging at times, but each group member did make it a priority to meet at least once a week to check in on progress and to move forward. And so this brings us to our conclusion. As Marjorie showed in the data, all participants showed improvement once using video self-evaluation during treatment. Now, it is possible that some improvement could have come from repetitive practice of each pose, but there's no data to back up this possibility. We also only start seeing the improvement in the data after transitioning into treatment, which speaks more to the benefit of the video self-evaluation. In the original study, the benefits of immediate feedback are mentioned by the researchers. For the replication, each participant also agreed that they felt that the immediate feedback was extremely important in self-evaluation to be able to check with that task analysis and see what they needed to fix right away. In the original research, or in the original study, researchers also thought it could be possible that improvement could have been obtainable by using only the task analysis without video self-evaluation. However, for the replication, participants found being able to watch themselves perform each part of the task analysis beneficial. No matter the percentage of improvement in the data, each participant felt more confident and comfortable practicing each asana after starting treatment. So overall, we feel that we replicated the study to the best of our ability despite any limitations we've run into. Similar to the original study, each participant showed some form of improvement after using video self-evaluation. There needs to be more data recorded in order to fully support the success rates of video self-evaluation at this time, but from our replication, we came to agree with the original researchers. Now, this brings us to the end of our presentation. So, thank you for watching.